Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to another episode of Friends of the Squared Circle, where I'm your host, Crander Q, a.k.a. my real name. Now, quick disclaimer, Randy was feeling like he wasn't getting enough love on the show, so there he is. He's talking about how my views did not count at getting 1,800 views on a YouTube short. Apparently, it has to be a full episode. Let's get that out of the way. We'll talk about Amy. Randy, take a shot, starting off hot. How you doing today there?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Oh, another day, another dollar. So, hopefully one day we can get past Randy here and move on. And I kind of froze up on your name there, so I was just like, oh, crap. So we already got our first mistake. Randy's going to eat me alive in the text after this, so.
Yeah, I mean, the name is Hambone. That's obviously a nickname, not my real name. My real name is Thomas. My shoot name. It's my shoot name, brother. But we're going to keep it kayfabe on here, and Hambone is what I go by on everything, social media. So.
Perfect. And I go by Crander Q just because it was an old handle, and it just sounds funny to say AKA my real name. So, but you know why you're here, sir. Let's talk about those first wrestling memories you got.
So my first, I can remember the exact moment that I found professional wrestling. I don't know how old I was, probably around 6 or 7. But I remember, just flipping the channels in my room, looking for something to watch. And I came across Monday Night Raw. And the first thing I saw was The Undertaker. And he was on the top rope, giving, the old school to somebody before it was called the old school. And I just remember being like, what is this? What is going on here? And then I sat there and watched it, and I was like, oh, a bunch of guys in costumes beating each other up, 6, 7-year-old boy. I was like, that's cool. And that was my first memory. That was when I discovered it, and I have watched it every single week since. And I'm 35 now, so.
So we're around the same age bracket, that Attitude Era, that Golden Era. So you weren't scared of Undertaker then? I know a lot of people mentioned, Kane was someone that scared him. The Undertaker didn't scare you?
The Undertaker did not. Mankind scared me when he first debuted.
Okay.
The vignettes of him in the boiler room, like playing with a rat and all that, those freaked me out. The Undertaker didn't, though, probably, because at that point, he was already a face. And, as a young kid, I basically, liked whatever WWE told me to like and hated who I was told to hate, because that's what you do as a kid. Mm-hmm. And so, he was a face by that point, so I don't remember ever being scared by him, but Mankind got me.
Now, full disclaimer, everyone knows that I'm afraid of practically everything. I'm afraid of E.T. I cannot stand him. But with Undertaker, I wasn't actually afraid, but you mentioned Mankind in those boiler room promos. That voice just added to that character, and I always say it too on here. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking of it. Mick Foley, just phenomenal, and that's probably my favorite face of Foley is Mankind. Mm-hmm. Just because it was so dark and mysterious, and then when he teamed up with Goldust, that's another one of my favorite wrestlers there. And then them going after the Undertaker was such a beautiful story. Like when they chained the casket, or all the shenanigans they pulled with him. So,
yeah, especially because up until then, we'd never seen anybody just destroy Undertaker the way that Mankind did. But yeah, I agree. I think that original Mankind gimmick is very underrated, because Mankind obviously became more popular as a funny comedy gimmick later in his career. But yeah, that original gimmick, I loved it.
Now, since we're on the topic, I wonder if he was not a big fan of that more dark character, and that's why it became goofy. I'm not sure if you know.
I listened to Mick's podcast, and he has talked about it, about how the original Mankind character was difficult for him because it was so dark. And not, like anything that he had done before. I guess you could kind of say, Cactus Jack wasn't really dark. He was just, really violent.
Yes.
But Mankind was dark to him. And he said it was difficult for him to do the gimmick at first. So
Now, can you imagine, like, with Bray and everything he's doing now, with Mankind and Taker, and even with, Dustin, aka Goldust? I mean, just those characters today would probably even be even more spooky and crazy with the theatrics.
yeah, absolutely.
I would just, I mean, you always say fantasy booking. I mean, Mankind in his, early debuts versus Bray Wyatt would have just been money, money, money to steal Shane McMahon's little, thing there. But
I'd love to see some back and forth promos between Bray and Mick Foley.
definitely, definitely. Was there any characters besides the Undertaker in those early days that captivated you? I know we mentioned Mankind, but anybody else? Was there anybody that you became a favorite of?
So Shawn Michaels is my all-time favorite wrestler,
Okay.
and that was right about the time where he was really being pushed as the face of the company. The Boyhood Dream storyline in '96 where he became champion for the first time. That was a very big important storyline for me because he was my guy. And then I absolutely loved DX Shawn.
Okay.
Heel DX Shawn is peak Shawn Michaels for me. That is my favorite time. But other characters then, Kane really captivated me. My all-time favorite wrestling storyline is the Kane and Undertaker saga.
Okay.
I think when you really look back at it, like the storytelling that was told in that and all the twists and turns, I honestly think it's one of the best storylines in wrestling of all time. It's my favorite storyline. So like I said, I love DX. So yeah, those were a lot of my guys then. And then for like my all-time favorites, I always say my Mount Rushmore is Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, CM Punk, and Randy Savage.
Okay.
So
See, at that time period when DX was starting to take their rise, I was more of a WCW kid. So, like, I kind of missed a lot of the DX stuff in the early days because I was excited to see what, NWO was rolling out with. One of my favorite stories, one of the first moments that I really got sucked in was, I always talk about it, was when Nash threw Rey Mysterio like a lawn dart. And I just, to this day, it's just, I don't know, it just gives me chills watching that backstage brawl, because at the time it was like, this is real stuff, like they're invading.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was the WWF kid, but
okay.
wrestling became, and I still call professional wrestling my first love. It really is. I there's nothing that I love like I love pro wrestling. It is my biggest fandom. It's a huge part of my life and my personality. And so, I was a WWF kid, but as I got older and smarter to the business, I went back and I watched everything from WCW. I watched everything from WWF before I had become a fan. That's actually kind of part of how I became a fan. I flipped channels. I saw The Undertaker. What was this? And then every week as a kid, on the weekends, my parents, we would go to a Blockbuster or a video store, and they would rent a movie for themselves, and I went right to the wrestling section and I watched every single video that they had over the weeks, every single Coliseum video, every WrestleMania from the 80s, every single thing I had never seen, I went back and watched. And I don't know, it was good times as a kid, just being exposed to all these over the top characters, especially because I was exposed to them all at once, just going back and seeing all these guys that weren't even wrestling in WWE anymore. So yeah, that was one of my earliest memories as well. It's just getting to know it through videotapes every week.
Yeah, I always talk about how on here kids have it so easy because they have the streaming services, whereas we actually would have to physically go out and in search of these tapes.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the first VHS tapes that I ever bought was SummerSlam. It was Dusty Rhodes and Ted DiBiase was a feud. It was Rick Rude in a steel cage match with Ultimate Warrior with that big blue heavy cage.
Yeah.
I probably watched that, over and over as a kid just because it was the only one I had,
Right.
because it
Right.
was in the for sale bin, and I was like, Mom, I need this, So
Right.
bless her heart for buying that for me. Now,
Hmm. Yeah.
so did you go to a lot of live events as a kid, or did it kind of happen more as an adult? It seems like the theme with a lot of people that have been on that growing up, they just kind of watched it on TV. Then as an adult, they were able to attend those live events.
Yeah, it definitely was more just watching it on TV as a kid. I mean,
Okay.
I grew up a poor kid, so we didn't really have money
Yeah.
to go to events a lot. My mom did bring me to one event as a kid, my first event, which I don't know, was probably 10, 11, somewhere in there. But my parents weren't a fan of it, so they didn't really want to keep going or anything either. So I mean, as
Yeah.
I became a teenager, I started going more because at that point, my mom, she would just drop me off with a friend of mine, and we would go. So, but yeah, it was definitely mostly going to events as an adult.
Yeah, lucky for me, I had a few uncles that were into it. My dad was more into racing. Um, Bless his heart, but I never got into that. I know it was kind of cool when wrestling would cross over with the monster trucks and the race cars.
Yeah.
And he would, be like, "Hey, come look at this," and I'd be like, "Oh, cool," and then I would just run away because there was no way I was going to watch people take left turns for 4 hours.
Right.
Sorry, Dad. I look like you, I act like you, but your interests, besides collecting, couldn't be any, polar opposites. But
Right.
like for me, and I see behind you, you got all your promo posters. My dad's obsessed with Bill Elliott, and his whole room is decked out with that McDonald's car. And yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we ate McDonald's that much, but he sure liked, the Bill Elliott. So,
Right.
and I'm actually named after Cal Yarbrough, one of the racers from back in the day. But that's the only thing that connects me to racing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my dad. But yeah, but that'd be a whole different podcast. You wouldn't even be here. But so with those first indie shows as a teenager, did you have any favorites on the independent scene that you remember, or guys that you kind of became friends with in that world?
So the funny thing about it is most of the people that were my favorites on the indies ended up getting to WWE or something
Oh,
like
okay,
that.
okay.
Yeah, I live in upstate New York. I'm near Syracuse. And
Oh,
we used
okay.
to have we used to have a company here called Squared Circle Wrestling, 2CW.
I didn't take the
And
name from them. Sorry.
and they got all the people, man, that became stars. I became a huge Brody Lee fan there.
Okay.
Um, that is, I mean, I'm only an hour from Rochester, so Brody was there all the time. I have a Brody Lee memorial tattoo after he died because he's one of my all-time favorites.
Very nice. Very
Um,
nice.
Kevin Owens came through there, Claudio Castagnoli, AJ Styles, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega. I mean, you name it, the wrestlers who are popular now who are making big money came through there, and those were a lot of my indie favorites.
Very nice. I'll have to get you in touch with my buddy King of Old School because he's from Syracuse,
Oh, really?
um, up there. Another giant beard collecting machine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and his brother-in-law was a wrestler there and wrestled Brody.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I'll have to find that all out or send you the old episode and you can kind of listen to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
got
I'd be interested to know who it
yeah,
was. 'Cause if
yeah.
I know him already.
How crazy would that be that you
Yeah,
guys
right.
seen each other at wrestling shows and now, you both kind of know me in a sense.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful
No,
thing about this is it's the friends of the squared circle, building this community kind of like we chatted, before. But yeah, that is too crazy that you were kind of in that area. So was he. So
yeah, yeah. Wrestling is weird in that way, man.
mhm.
I found that it definitely connects people in weird ways.
Yep.
Everybody kind of knows each other, even in like fan circles and things like that. Like, I don't know, it's a weird niche hobby that's really unlike anything else, in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Yeah, we always take the criticism that it's fake. Yes, we know it's
Hmm.
fake, but it's entertaining to us. You can't fake gravity. I mean, there's 100 million things we can say to defend ourselves, but the
Absolutely.
one thing that I feel that is most important with it is, again, forming these friendships. Like my buddy Bob, when I first got back into wrestling in 2008, he's sitting across the room from me, and Bob's very quiet. And he's like talking, and I'm like, yeah, okay, dude. Like, I'm just here for the pizza and the little bit of wrestling. And
Hmm.
then fast forward, 5 years after that, him and I are on the road almost every weekend, hitting wrestling shows, getting our pictures taken. Bob is notorious for painting up steel chairs for the superstars. I don't want to show any of that stuff off on here because I want him to come on. Uh,
Yeah.
no disrespect, Bob. I love you, but I know you're shy, so we're going to get you on here. But I mean, everybody always tried to recruit Bob as a wrestler. He always had the big beard. I kind of started growing mine out after Daniel Bryan, so like I imitate Bob a lot. But that's one of my best friends to this day that just happened to be at another friend's house, and we watch wrestling on the regular. So
Yeah, I mean it's the same with me, man. My three best friends in life, we all formed bonds over pro wrestling as kids, and they're still my best friends to this day. So, yeah, again, I think that's one of the reasons that I say that it's had such an effect on my
mhm.
life. You know, it's not just a whatever hobby for me. Like, you know, wrestling, it
Yep.
matters to me because it has had such an impact on my life in so many different ways. So
Yeah, it's great. And just like we mentioned, the king of old school here. I just saw that he had some collectibles up, and I chatted on him on Instagram, and we've been buddies for 6 years, and finally met a couple years ago down in Tampa at WrestleMania during the pandemic, and we talk almost every day. And it's just like
yeah,
I've only met him at one time in person, but now
yeah,
he's on
yeah,
my silly. Yeah, it's just
yeah,
crazy. I can go
yeah.
on
I
and
mean,
on about it for you.
I'm sure that we'll probably talk about this a little bit more, but I mean,
Yep.
you found me on
Yep.
TikTok,
Exactly. Yep.
and I mean, TikTok has been that for me as well. You know, there's a community of wrestling. You know, we all refer to it as Wrestle Talk, and I mean, I've only been on it for less than a year, I think,
Gotcha. Okay.
and I've made friends on it across the country, people who I've never met in real life. My podcast that I do on Sunday, like it's with somebody who I met on TikTok, and we've become good friends. We've never met each other in real life. I mean, I sent Christmas cards to these
Very
people,
nice. Yep.
you know, people who I've never met, all because of an app and a shared love of pro wrestling. So
Yeah, definitely. It is a crazy world. We'll get back on topic here in a second, but with that being said, now I'm sure you travel a lot with wrestling. Now it's cool because, like, hypothetically, like I'm in the Wisconsin area. You probably got friends in the Florida area. So, if you ever take those trips, it's like, oh, it's a bonus because I finally
right,
A, get to meet these people, B, see what their indie scene or wrestling scene is like, and it's a whole new culture shock.
yeah, yeah.
Um, for
People who
instance,
would take me
yeah,
in and probably give me a place to stay for the the
definitely,
thing
yeah.
too. You know what I
Like
mean?
as long as we find out you're not a murderer, just kidding.
Right.
But that would be a great series. We should write it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but with First Wrestling, I talk about them all the time on my podcast because they are my favorite promotion out of Minneapolis. The characters there are just phenomenal, and like we got Atomic Thunder Frog, we got Darren Corbin. It's you got a frog, and then you got the most hated man in Minnesota, and it's just two polar opposites, but it works for that promotion. And I could go to your neck of the woods, and I would see, like the strongest guy ever, or who knows. But
Right. Right.
definitely,
Yeah.
I look forward to after the wedding, Randy take a shot, so I can start traveling more and do more of these things. So,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
but back to the wrestling because people are probably sure we're just geeking out here about our friends and trying to sound cool. Um, have you ever thought about getting into wrestling? Is that something you've ever thought about? I know we talked off camera about my personal experience with it, but has that been something that you might have thought of as a kid to do?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It was absolutely my dream to be a professional wrestler. And at 17, I went into wrestling school.
Okay.
It was actually the 2CW wrestling school, but kind of before I knew that they existed. But I ran out of money. Couldn't really. They were doing a thing where like you could pay week by week if you wanted to. But I mean I was 17 years old.
Right.
Again, a poor family, all that stuff. I didn't really have money to continue it. And then as I got older, I kept saying, "Oh, I'll go back to it. I'll go back to it." And then life happens,
Right.
and I never went back to it. At this point, again, wrestling, it's my passion. It's my first love. It's the only thing that I really, obviously outside of my friends and family and stuff like that, it's the only thing that I really, really care about and love. And it is still my dream to work in professional wrestling, not as a wrestler at this point.
Okay.
Obviously, wrestling is a young person's game. And, I think we're past that happening. But I do still want to work in wrestling. That's honestly the reason that I got on TikTok and I started making videos is because
Okay.
I'm trying to make contacts in wrestling. I'm trying to work my way in. Like I said, I'm 35 and I'm getting to a point where I feel like I have to make it happen or else it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was been my dream since I was a kid, and it's still my dream now as a middle-aged adult.
Well, I'm right there with you. Like we say, contact or contacts.
Hmm.
Networking. That's why I reached out to you.
Yeah,
Because I liked your videos, the stuff you were throwing out, and then you just happened to be on live one day, and I just popped in and like, hey man, like,
yeah,
shoot my shot here. You don't, I'm not very big. I started at 0, but I'm almost at 250. So I'm
yeah.
slowly making waves. I'm loving doing these vendor tables because it's brought out a new resurgence in energy to um, connect with people. Just for instance, we were just at an MAW show and they had Diamond Dallas Page, they had Molly Holly, and a few other Rachel Ellering. And I ran up to every single wrestler, handed them stickers and stuff. Like I know they're not going to reach out to me, but I'm just passing my stuff out to say, hey, like I'm here. And I thank you for coming. And here's a little treat from me because I'm sure, yes, they get paid, but it's more of a personal experience. I feel. And then I talk to every independent wrestler there too. Like, hey, I got this
Yeah.
show. You want to come on? We're going to talk about you as a fan. We're not going to talk about your career. I don't want to know how many leg drops you dropped, brother. I don't want to know, who's your favorite match because you're going to get asked that at every independent show and you're going to get sick of hearing it. That's
Yep.
one thing I
Yep.
learned from Honky Tonk Man. Of all the people I learned, he's like, every Comic Con that I go to, I'm sick of hearing, oh, what was your favorite match? Who
Yeah.
was your favorite opponent? Da
Yeah.
da 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 da. So as
Yeah.
he was saying that in the beginning, I was like, oh, well, he wrestled my buddy Joe, aka Uncle Clutch, and Clutch got Honky Tonk Man tattooed on his ass. So I was like, hey, do you remember that time you were in Duluth and got a wrestler to get a tattoo of your face on their ass? And he just popped. He thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I asked him a question that nobody had asked. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing that I have learned, in the past, couple years where I've actually been trying to really make it happen in wrestling is that it is all about contacts. It's
Mhm.
all about who you know. And if somebody sees you and you impress them, I worked Starcast last year.
Okay.
I know you said you want to talk about wrestling experiences, so I'll just
Yeah.
go into that. I, decided that, hey, I gotta find out a way to make this happen. So I started reaching out to anybody that I could find, that had any kind of connection in pro wrestling. And, I listened to all of, Conrad Thompson's podcasts. I
Mhm.
love Conrad. I love his podcast. He does Starcast, obviously. Um, and I came across on Twitter somebody who worked for him for Starcast. She does like the Starcast events. And I just reached out to her and I told her my story. I was like, hey, this might be weird that, I just happened to come across you and find you, but, this is my story. I'm a huge wrestling fan. I've always wanted to work in wrestling. I'm just trying to get in. I'll do anything. If you have any kind of opportunities, I'd be interested to hear it, So she goes, well, this was right before the Ric Flair last match event, and they were
Okay.
doing a Starcast before that. And she goes, that's coming up, and I'm still taking volunteers, and if you can find a way out here, then I'll put you to work. And I said, okay, I'm going to figure that out. I spent a lot of money that I did not have to get myself down there. And it was a crazy weekend. It was an extremely fun weekend. And, I busted my ass those 3 days that I was there. And luckily, I impressed her. There was somebody else there who represents a lot of wrestlers who was putting on the event with her. I impressed him as well. And we are still in contact every month. And they tell me that, hey, as soon as we've got something, we're gonna come right to you and see if you want to work it. And I mean that's what it is. It's contacts. You gotta get out there somehow. You gotta impress them and stay in contact. And I feel like I was able to do that. I did what I went down there to do, which was to make some contacts that could possibly get me somewhere in wrestling. So I'm always exploring that. I do have like a second podcast that I do with my buddy here. It's a very local podcast for a local radio station because he is a one of the co-hosts of the morning show of a very popular radio station here. And so we have a professional radio station at our dispense. And we have done several wrestling interviews. We've interviewed Mark Jindrak, JJ Dillon, Warhorse.
Very nice.
Eddie Kingston. I interviewed Eric Bischoff last year.
Oh yeah, I just saw that one the other day when I was creeping on you.
Yeah. So that's another thing where like I just, I go on Twitter, I go on Instagram. If these wrestlers have their messages open, I shoot my shot. Hey, do you want to come on here? Worst they can say is no or not answer, Every now and then I get a yes and I get to talk to somebody. Mark Jindrak, he actually lived here at the moment where I live because he's from up here as well. And him and I have kind of become friendly. I have Mark's number in my phone. We talk every now and then. I'm getting involved in a pro wrestling movie that's being shot here in my hometown. So anything that's like that, I'll make any kind of contact. I'll do anything when it comes to pro wrestling because I just want to get my foot in that door somehow. So.
Oh, definitely. If I wasn't getting married, Randy, take a shot. I would probably be doing more of these tables because I just started doing them, and it's a blast. It's basically me just clowning on myself, just handing out my silly little stickers. I had hats, but I'm waiting till after winter to start putting some more of those out there. I'm just trying to get, invest in something and pass it out so someone takes notice. I've actually tried to reach out to Rachel Ellering, but I'm sure she was probably like, oh, another weird dude, in my DM, so delete. But trying to make sure you stay professional. Don't be weird out there, people. Disclaimer, they don't like the weirdos, so... But yeah, I'm just trying to reach out to collectible people too. Sure you have or haven't seen one of my episodes because we haven't been talking that long, but where I get the collectors on and they have wrestling figures. So that's a whole nother racket that I'm jumping into because myself, I'm a collector. Behind you, I can see that you collect, obviously, your photos. So it's a whole nother world that's exciting. I'd love to go to toy conventions because one, I could buy stuff. Sorry, Amy, Randy, take a shot. And two, it just, be amongst another group of people that are out there trying to build their own networks. So
Right. Yeah. That's all it is with this business, man. It's all contacts.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. It doesn't have to be real hatred here. Was there any wrestlers that you just despised and couldn't stand? If you say Darren Corbin, we're going to block you because he's a sponsor here at Friends of the Squared Circle. But was there any wrestlers that you just couldn't stand? And and like I said, it doesn't have to be real. It's just that emotion that just gets you pissed off.
So I have never been a Hulk Hogan fan. Even as a kid, I hated his. This was when I became a fan, it was nearing the end of his babyface run right before he got to the NWO. But I hated his good guy shtick.
Okay.
Like I said, as a kid, I went back and I watched like all the stuff that I hadn't seen. So I'd watched a lot of Hulk Hogan, and I just didn't get him. Didn't get the hype. I thought he was terrible in the ring. I just could not get into him. And even to this day, I'm still not a fan of his. I think enough has come out about him as a person to justify that dislike that I had of him. I would say he was the biggest one as a kid. I can't think of anybody else who I just really, really disliked. Right now, I know you said Darren Corbin, but God, I hate Baron Corbin.
That's his brother now. Come on, just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, not a fan of that guy. That guy has turned the channel heat with me. He bores the shit out of me.
Okay.
And again, it's one of those things where in my head I go, all right, this isn't for you. Somebody out there must like Baron Corbin, I guess. I don't know why they would, but apparently somebody has to. But yeah, man, I can't do it with Baron Corbin.
Yeah, somebody's definitely buying his t-shirts. When he was in NXT as the Lone Wolf, I kind of like that. I didn't really care.
You know what? Let me ask you then, because I've asked this question a lot of times. I say I don't like Baron Corbin, and everybody's reaction is the same as you. Oh, the Lone Wolf was cool. Let me ask you, why? What was cool about the Lone Wolf? He had awesome music. I'll give you that.
Okay,
but at the end of the day, he was just kind of a dude that came out. He had no character, nothing.
Not really. No, I agree there. Yeah. I mean, I just liked him, because he had, I feel like, the smug asshole, like, I don't give a shit attitude. Just kind of came out and kind of wrecked people. Wasn't dominantly, but, he was new. He was flashy for me. Bless his heart for cutting that hair, but oh my gosh. I liked him. I just, I always used him on the video games. I kind of like the, this is my way. I don't need other people to help me. Because that was kind of my attitude for a while there. I kind of resonated with that. I don't need help. I'll get to where I need to get to by myself. I've learned that it's okay to ask for help, but I mean, I like the NXT version, and anything else was just kind of like, where are we going with it? And then they keep changing his character. I think that's another turnoff for people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, none of the characters ever really connect either. I think the most telling thing about Baron Corbin is the best work he has ever done was him being homeless.
And that's funny.
That is the thing that Baron Corbin has done that people enjoyed the most was bum ass Corbin. Like, what does that say about him? You know what I mean?
Now, that's funny that you bring that up because I hope Darren doesn't hate me for this or think I'm spreading something. I've known Darren for like 12 years. But if you ever check out Darren Corbin, when he was wrestling in Las Vegas, he kind of did a homeless thing. Okay.
Oh, really?
And then, Darren was doing some behind the scenes stuff, extra work, got a few tryout matches there. Yes, Randy, my boy Darren Corbin is legit. But he was doing the tryout stuff. And then they kind of like swapped, numbers and their Instagram buddies and blah, blah, blah. You can check that out on Darren Corbin's Patreon at patreon.com/Darren Corbin, cheap plug. But, and then next thing you know, after like a year or so after that had happened, Baron started doing that. I'm like, In my opinion, I'm wondering if he like went through and saw that and was like, that's kind of funny shit because like Darren was taking the title out on dates and, and then he was running around homeless and they were interviewing him and stuff. So me personally, I don't care who believes it or not, but I feel like maybe Baron kind of got that from Darren, but I have to look at the timelines, but I'm sure Darren did it first, obviously.
I mean, that sounds plausible. Baron Corbin seems like the kind of guy who would steal from people because he can't get over. Just saying.
Yeah. And I feel like, everything that I do see of him online, like with his Instagram and Twitters and stuff, like he's funny online because he doesn't put up with the bullshit, but other stuff, it feels like he's a genuine person. I kind of liked what he was doing with Madcap Moss because I love stupid jokes like that. So I was like, that's kind of, funny.
Friend.
Well, I'm a sucker for bad jokes because I don't tell good jokes. But but then Madcap got serious there, and I was like, oh, now everybody's behind Madcap. I hate the name, by the way.
Yeah, it's awful. I don't know why they haven't changed it yet.
Yeah, I'm hopefully if he comes, because I thought he got injured again, but if he comes back, maybe they'll do what they did with Dewdrop and drop the bullshit name and stuff. Well, I'm swearing a lot when I say don't swear on my podcast. I don't think you even dropped one yet. But yeah, I mean, I like Baron, and I kind of like that he was, a football player transitioning in, that type of stuff too, and putting in the work. But I know Triple H was high on him for a while, and then it just kind of fizzled. But
yeah. I mean, I understand like why they keep him around. He very much does seem like the kind of guy. I mean, he doesn't cause any trouble. He kind of does whatever they ask of him. He doesn't bitch or anything like that about losing or anything, which he does a lot. So, he's a company guy. So, I don't think
yes, man. I mean, every business needs ones, and he probably figures, if I eat enough, crap, they'll give me something good. But
I don't think just from what I've seen of Baron Corbin, I don't think he really cares about that kind of stuff. I don't think he cares about wrestling in that way. I think he just kind of looks at it as a job and a business that pays him well. Okay. So he kind of just does whatever, which is a fine attitude. If you don't care about titles and stuff like that, that's cool. I think that's the approach that he takes to it, and that's also probably why I think he gets used as much as he does.
Gotcha.
WWE kind of likes guys, or I should say the previous regime, Vince and all that, would love a guy like that who just looks at it as a business and, hey, I don't care if I win or lose, and I'm not going to bitch if you make me lose, and just pay me and I'll be, a good employee about it. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, not to, because I never know when I'm going to meet these wrestlers. That's why I was afraid to talk about them sometimes. But like, hearing the stories about JTG where he would hide backstage because he didn't actually want to work. He just wanted to get paid for being there, if you're there for catering and that's what you like, cool. Like, and that's another thing with wrestling, we call them the smart marks, that if someone's not being used, then they're all automatically buried. It's like, well, what's the reason behind them not being used? Are they injured? Are they in trouble? They always say there's nothing for them, but I feel like that's a cop out for the business to say, well, he did something wrong on the road and we got to punish him. But then again, we're going to the Usos. Like, you never punished him for all that crap, but it's just, you don't know the real reason behind it. Like, we don't know what these people are doing off of camera. So just relax with the buried comments, but
I think that term gets overused anyway.
All the time, and I hate it. That and this person deserves a title run, or this person deserves a title run. Just because I played Pee Wee football does not mean that I need a first place trophy, even though my team did make it.
Right.
And that's the other thing too, is like you'll have Robert Roode. I love Robert Roode. NXT champion, dominant, did great. Comes up to the Raw roster, just kind of gets fumbled. But then if he would have won that title, everyone would have said, well, I knew that was going to happen because he was an NXT champion.
Right.
Just because they're NXT champion doesn't mean they're going to be a WWE or AEW champion.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, everyone has a role. And one thing I learned from Road Warrior Animal, rest in peace, was, WWE has these trucks in their trailers and billboards and signage made out a year in advance almost, or months in advance, and they have, say, Roman or Bianca on the trailer, and then here comes, like Lacey Evans or Joe Schmo who gets over. Well, they've already invested all this money in all these billboards and trucks. They're not going to push them right away because all of their advertisement is already set.
Yeah.
Yes, it's easy to go in and fix that, but how much money is that going to cost?
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've thrown at people, and they're like, "Oh, that's bullshit." I'm like, "No, look at some of these, Dorito companies. Like, they have an endorsement with Roman Reigns, hypothetically, and you're putting out this $1 million commercial. You can't just go, well, Daniel Bryan's over now, so we need to tell Roman we're going to reshoot the ad. He's not going to be, it's just, that's how I look at it too.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of times where, regardless of things like that, that wrestling needs to pivot I kind of think that right now they need to pivot with Sami Zayn,
I
because
agree. Yep. Yep.
I feel like they're more going towards Sammy and KO maybe for the tag titles, and I think that's the wrong move right now.
Yeah.
As amazing as this storyline has been, I really think that if it does not end with Sammy being world champion, that it's going to be a letdown for the fans. So I do think that right now they need to pivot. I do think that there are times where that needs to happen, but I definitely get what you're saying.
Oh yeah, I mean, like with storyline, that's totally fine. I'm just saying, like, one reason they probably don't, swing them up so fast to get in the title picture is because they have that investment.
Right.
I'm not just saying because Daniel Bryan gets, exposure that he's got to be the champion. I meant more for advertising. So
yeah.
But I mean, no one's gonna take that away from Daniel Bryan during that movement. That shit was crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
And I mean, that's what I keep comparing Sammy to right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's having a very natural underdog face turn, very much like Daniel Bryan. And I think, they took a little too long to pull the trigger on Daniel when it happened. So I'm hoping they don't do it with Sammy. We'll see where the storyline is going, but I really do hope it ends with him being champion.
Yeah, I'm I've been loving Roman, when they were saying the Rock and stuff, but this kind of has changed my mind.
Yeah.
It'd be cool. I mean, I'm cool with him splitting it. Where he gets one at the Chamber, Cody can have one at Mania, or Cody chases it a little bit longer. Because Cody's not gonna lose anything for taking an L. It's Cody Rhodes. He can bounce back, or he can just be like, hey, I'm stepping back to see what happens with Sammy.
Yeah. I really don't see Cody not ending up world champion at the end of this. I think they've put enough time and money into him. I think they've made it clear that he is going to be one of the guys for the next couple of years. And I'm a huge Cody fan, so I'm down with that happening as well. I do believe that, the title should just get split at this point. I, had a whole storyline written out in my head where it made sense, where both Sammy and Cody walked out as world champion at WrestleMania. They didn't really go that way, but I'm still hoping that they get there somehow. And I think there are ways that you could get there still. So.
And it would be kind of cool if they did, back with, not to mention Chris Benoit, because everybody's going to hate me, but Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, and Kurt Angle, where Angle left or came in with 2 titles, left with none.
Right.
That'd be kind of a cool little thing, where Roman got them both up for grabs in a 2 out of 3 or 2 out of whatever. And then just having Cody gets one, and then you're like, oh shit, he's going to win the second one. Or Roman's going to retain, and then here comes Sammy. Remember me?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, my original idea was that Sammy and Cody would be the final 2 in the Rumble, and they'd go over and hit the floor at the same time.
Okay.
And then they would both be declared champion. And then I figured, Roman will start to get real paranoid at Sammy, and then he'll turn on him at Elimination Chamber in Canada, get a huge, reaction. And then it ends up being, Roman versus Cody for 1 belt on night 1, and then versus Sammy on night 2 for the other. That was my idea, but I still feel like there's ways that you could get there and still do it.
Oh yeah, that's the beautiful thing, is there's a million different things they could do with that stuff. So
yeah,
I mean, I personally, like, if Sammy doesn't win it, that he keeps chasing it. And like I said, Cody could lose at WrestleMania, and that could build up next year's WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Where Cody's already got the strap somewhere through the year, and he's coming back to get it from Roman because Sammy ruined it, or, something else. But
sure.
Well, before we get you out of here, I like to keep these to a certain time, like we talked off camera. Go ahead. The floor is yours. Feel free to plug anything you got to plug there, socials and all that. And then afterwards, or once we release it, we'll get that information and then put it in the comment section for you.
Yeah. I am most active, like I said, on TikTok. I mean, my TikTok handle is right there, Hambone with 3 A's, 3 O's. You can follow me on Instagram under my shoot name. Thomas.Cummings920. I'm on Twitter as notorious_bone. Real annoying. I got different names everywhere. And then I do a podcast every Sunday, 7 to 9 p.m., a live podcast that is on the Panda Wrestling Company's Twitch channel. It is me and my co-host, Con from the 703 on Twitter or on TikTok, excuse me. And it's called Ego Drip, the wrestling podcast. Our podcast is, we're both kind of, I've cultivated this character on TikTok that I am the Wrestle Talk Drip God, because I love, outside of wrestling, I love fashion and clothing. And I've gotten a reputation on my videos for the stuff that I wear. My co-host, he's a rapper, so he's got his rapper swag, and he loves fashion. So our podcast kind of revolves around the fashion of pro wrestling. So the first hour, we pick a wrestler, we spotlight them, we look at all of their different looks over the years and kind of critique them and whether we like them or not. And then the second hour, we do different segments, like our drip of the week, our favorite outfit of the week, our drag of the week, our least favorite, flashback fit of the week, something from the past that we'd like to look from the past. So that's what it's about. Like I said, Sundays 7 to 9 every Sunday, except for this Sunday. We're not doing a show this Sunday, but we're on almost every Sunday.
Gotcha. And you're too busy coming on Friends of the Squared Circle. I get it. No,
exactly.
Now, we do a thing here up in the Midwest. We call it the Midwest Goodbye. You mentioned the Panda wrestling channel there. So we're going to have you kind of elaborate on that because, I want to be, educated, as well as people that do watch this here. If you want to explain that, then I got one more question before we truly get you out of here. So
sure. So Panda is a person. You can go on TikTok. His handle is Love Panda, at Love Panda. And he is a huge pro wrestling fan. I believe he's done some pro wrestling in his life as well. He's got like 30,000 followers or so. So he's got a pretty big, decent following. And he decided last year that he kind of wanted to start a little podcast company. And he was taking people from Wrestle Talk that he thought would make good podcasts. And he kind of gives a bunch of us, we get 2-hour dedicated blocks to do whatever we want as a show. There are wrestling podcasts I'm pretty sure every single night on the Panda Wrestling Company's Twitch. So you can go on there every single night from probably 6 p.m. to 11 a.m. and watch a bunch of different creators talk wrestling and do different kinds of podcasts and things like that every single night. So we're all just kind of trying to make something happen, a little grassroots thing together and see what comes of it. So
perfect. Okay. Because I hear that thrown around on TikTok a lot. I'm starting to get better at posting all the time. I'm doing little clips here and there. Started doing the Crander Q has a question for you. Just to kind of get in practice with that to put on there. But I have to remember to make a separate video before I do that. But, the social media game, it takes a lot of work. And then you got to remember there's a million sites. So you got to put something on everything to keep it fresh. So.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And then lastly, oops, go ahead. Sorry.
But you can follow Panda on there. You can follow the Twitch channel. All of us are on there.
Perfect. All right. Last question before we get you out of here. You mentioned you love fashion. Who are your top 3 worst dressed or your top 3 best dressed? I'll let you pick the side you want to go. And if we can get those top 3 from you, then we'll get you out of here.
Of pro wrestling we're talking about?
Pro wrestling. The worst or the best. You get to pick the side you want to go on.
I'm gonna go with best.
Okay.
And I'm going to say Shawn Michaels, obviously. I think Shawn always had cool tights. I always thought that, he always came out in different entrance gear. His entrance gear was very different than everybody's at the time. I think it's hard not to put Ric Flair on there.
Okay.
Obviously, he's the most styling, the most profiling. We open our podcast with that. We're the most styling, profiling podcast on the Panda Wrestling Company. And then I am going to say Razor Ramon.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely Razor. Razor, Scott Hall just had that coolness factor to him. Everything he did was cool. Everything he wore was cool, even outside of the ring. When he was doing the Razor stuff, he was a drippy man. He was very drippy, that man. So those would be my 3.
All right, perfect. Well, Thomas, I can't appreciate you enough for coming on, and now you are a friend of the Squared Circle. Yes, cheap plugs. I appreciate your time, for one, replying, getting back to us, and then just agreeing to come on. It means a lot, so we can continue to, like we talked about, networking.
Yeah.
I can't say thank you enough. You'll hear me saying that 1,000 times, even after we post this. But yeah, we'll get all those social media things. We'll put them on here. I like to say I kick people out of the studio because I feel like I have some authority with this show, and it makes me feel like a man. The beard's just a cover. But we'll definitely have to get you out of part 2 so we can talk some of those collectibles behind you, as well as some of that fashion, because I would love to hear some of that stuff on my little shows here. So.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Perfect.
Down to come on again anytime you want.
Awesome.
Yeah, I could definitely shoot you some sites for some wrestling fashion that goes outside of just t-shirts.
Perfect. All righty, sir. We'll kick you out here, and then we'll chat in the lounge. We'll plug these sponsors here. All right. Oops, I cut them off too soon. I'm notorious for that. I'm such a baddie. There you go, Luby. That's a shout out to you. All right, folks. Before we get you out of here, let's give a huge shout out to our sponsor here at Friends of the Squared Circle. We have Darren Corbin. Yes, Darren Corbin is a sponsor of Friends of the Squared Circle. You can check them out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, as well as TikTok. Another great way to support Darren Corbin is on patreon.com/Darren Corbin, where tiers just start out at $1. And if I recommend any tier, it's the 8x10 to get a bi-monthly 8x10. Also, we have our custom tumblers made by Superior Curations. You can see Joey and Sierra there just got their custom tumblers. They love them. We got some new ones coming out at the MAW show. After this episode, you'll see some new graphics, as well as we got Darren Corbin and Eric Cannon there. Follow them on Facebook.com/Superior Creations for all your custom tumbler needs, as well as a shout out to the boys at 13 Cards Subject to Change, another podcast, rival podcast here in our area. Give a huge shout out to Jesse and Zach and Leroy's second place beard. And I still haven't changed that graphic. Again, I don't know if I want to. They're probably going to kill me, but that is what it is. And it's your boy, Crander Q. Crander Q out.